Good evening and welcome to the fourth seminar of the 2025 Digital Classicist London programme. Welcome to all of you online, those in person at the ICS in London and those of you following us on YouTube. My name is Stephen Kay and I'm the Archaeology Manager at the British School of Rome, from where I'll be chairing this session this afternoon. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Ester Salgarella from the University of Aarhus, a specialist in Bronze Age Aegean scripts. Her work integrates archaeology, linguistics, epigraphy, paleography, and history, and uses scripts in their material and cognitive aspects as a heuristic tool to investigate and reconstruct contemporary social dynamics. She was awarded a PhD at the University of Cambridge in 2018, and her dissertation was published as a monograph, Aegean Linear Scripts, Rethinking the Relationship between Linear A and Linear B by Cambridge University Press in 2020. After her PhD, she was a junior research fellow at St John's College and an affiliated lecturer in the Faculty of Classics at the University of Cambridge, and subsequently joined the Inscribe project at the University of Bologna as a postdoctoral researcher. She is now a postdoctoral fellow at the Aarhus Institute of Advanced Studies with a project titled Engaging Mind and Materiality, Ideography Through Time. Before I hand over, please note that you can ask questions in the chat function online, and at the end of Esther's presentation, I will read out those online, and we'll also take those questions for those of you in person and in London. So today, Esther will be speaking on Sort It, See It, Say It, digital strategies to revive a Bronze Age Aegean script. Esther, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Steve, for a very rich and presentation, and thanks a lot for this introduction. I'd like first to extend my thanks to both Gabriel and Kathy, who are here in the room, and Elizabeth, who can be here, for accepting my talk for my paper for this presentation. I'm very delighted to be here in person, and I hope I will offer some stimulating ideas and thoughts for discussion. So yeah, sort it, see it, say it. So a Bronze Age script of the Aegean family, Minoan Linear A might not be known to many a listener except by name. Perusing the cumbersome 5-volume old-fashioned corpus, as well as mastering the prior knowledge necessary to interpret Linear A inscriptions, still falls within the purview of specialists. So this paper presents and explores 3 digital strategies I have been developing to revive and enliven the kaleidoscopic nature of the Linear A script and the material objects it is attested on, and to disseminate its knowledge beyond academia with a view to engage in a wider, educated, yet not necessarily specialist audience. So these digital strategies make up the tricolon Sort It, See It, Say It, which will frame this talk's discussion. Sort it, the driving question being how to sort and sort out Linear A inscriptions. Say it, once sorted, sorted, where to see Linear A inscriptions, and finally say it, once sorted and seen, what to say about the wider historical context in which Linear A inscriptions were used. So let us start with a basic overview of the so-called Minoan Linear A script. In mainstream scholarly literature, Linear A is commonly defined as the logosyllabic or idiosyllabic writing system used primarily on Crete, but also tested in mainland Greece, the Aegean Islands, and Asia Minor during the Middle to Late Bronze Age. Linear A writes the still poorly understood Minoan language, most likely indigenous to Crete and not relatable to any linguistic family so far known. Linear A shows 2 main contexts of use, traditionally labeled administrative and non-administrative. Most descriptions fall into the category of administrative documents. These are a variety of clay documents functioning as records of economic transactions for the bookkeeping of palatial administration of the late Bronze Age Crete. On the slide, the most common document types are shown, not to scale. These are clay tablets, Tablets, like the one in the center of the slide, recording the flow of incoming and outgoing goods. Roundels, left side on the slide, understood to have functioned as some sort of receipts for incoming or outgoing goods, and ceilings of different types, right side on the slide, usually attached to goods when transported. But linear inscriptions are also attested on a variety of other supports, such as stone, metal, and pottery, and some examples are displayed on the slide. From left to right, we have a stone libation ladle with a carved inscription, a clay conical cap with a painted inscription, and a golden ring with a carved inscription. In most cases, these objects and the inscriptions they bear were used in what we understand to have been religious or cultic contexts, and are therefore thought to have performed ritual, cultic, votive, and dedicatory functions. Some further examples of non-administrative linear inscriptions to highlight linear A material diversity are, from left to right, a carved silver pin, a stone libation table, and the inscription runs along the rim of the object, and a tall clay storage jar called pithos with inscription on the rim. Finally, there are also some so-called functional objects which bear linear inscriptions. These standardly fall into the category of non-administrative objects, despite not necessarily being cultic or ritually character. Some examples are given on the slide. We have an inside inscription on a clay pithos jar and one on a pithos shoulder, and lastly a carved stone vase, one of its kind. So now we may well wonder, where can we see linear inscriptions if not in museums, of course? Where are they published? The one and only corpus of linear inscriptions in 5 volumes was published by Louis Godard and Jean-Pierre Olivier in the 1970s and 80s. These are called inscriptions in linear A, excuse my French, also known as GORILA. The corpus is available in print form only, although scans have recently been made available online by the publishers. So for each linear inscriptions, the corpus shows a black and white photo of the document, a drawing, and 2 transcriptions. The first one, top right, is faithful to the original layout of the text, while the second one, bottom right, shows standardized sign shapes along with a functional arrangement of the text. The corpus was a considerable achievement for the time, allowing for an accurate and detailed interpretation of the material. However, as it does have its own limitations. First, it is not intended for a wide readership and is only accessible to those who already have some prior knowledge of linear A, given that neither a transliteration nor a transnumeration of the linear A signs appearing in the inscription is given. The first supplement to GORILA came out this year, published by Maurizio Delfreo and Julian Zulbach. It is in print form only, and it contains all linear inscriptions published after the 5th volume of GORILA, which is to say after the 1980s. Inscriptions are presented in the same fashion as in GORILA, so black and white photograph, line drawing, and a transcription with linear A standardized sign shapes. In addition to GORILA and its supplement, I'd like to mention a couple of recently developed digital projects, one of which is still ongoing, which have produced photographic datasets allowing for neater and high-resolution viewing of linear inscriptions. First, the European Research Council-funded Inscribe project, based at the University of Bologna with Professor Silvia Ferrara as PI, developed 3D models of a number of linear A and Cretan hieroglyphic inscriptions, and on the slide you can see a selected example as it appears in the project's 3D viewer, which allows to rotate the artifacts, change the direction of the light source, as well as zooming in and out into the writing surface to appreciate smaller details of the inscription. All 3D models are open access on the project website, and I would highly recommend having a look and play around with them. It's very much fun. So the second project I'd like to mention is the Phytoepigraphic project, a joint collaboration between La Sapienza University of Rome, the Heraclion Museum, and Ulm University of Milan. They've developed reflectance transformation imaging models, also known as RTIs, of Linear A and Linear B tablets, ceilings, and inscribed vessels, and the project is still ongoing, with more documents being added over time. The RTI technique captures an object's shape and color to reveal surface information invisible under normal examination and allows for the light source to be projected from different directions to produce varying highlights and shadows. On the slide, you can see 3 screenshots I took in the project's RTI viewer under different light conditions. Again, I would highly recommend using the RTI viewer as well, and to maybe double check how it works compared to the 3D models. So after this short overview of Linear A inscriptions, and where, how, and to what extent we can see them, I shall now dive into my own project and explain reasons that led me to starting it. So first and foremost, there is a need to move away from old-style static print-only corpora and editions and towards interactive digital tools. Linear A scholarship is no exception, and actually I'd say it suffers from serious under-digitalization, as it were. Print-only corpora are difficult to peruse. Think of GORILA, for instance, what I just showed you on the previous slides, and not always available in libraries. Moreover, these corpora are often specialist-oriented and require a great deal of prior knowledge to be perused. And once again, think of GORILA and how information is displayed there. Finally, printed corpora are static, limited in functions, as they do not allow to perform combinatory or statistical searches unless one does it painstakingly by hand, as I did it for my PhD dissertation, for instance. On the other hand, digital editions, databases, websites, and tools lato sensu are easier to access as available online. Most of the time, they are meant to be user-friendly, self-explanatory, and knowledge-building. Moreover, they are interactive, show a variety of features, and offer a variety of functions. Needless to say, they can easily be implemented over time and constantly updated. Keeping this in mind, when it comes to Linear A, I developed the strategy sorted, see it, say it, which I'm now going to illustrate in more detail. Sorted. So to start off with, how to sort and sort out Linear A inscriptions. This may be no easy task for non-expert, as it requires prior knowledge of how to peruse GORILA, which, as we have seen, it is quite cumbersome, and its recently published supplement. Thus, to ease the task of finding where a Linear A inscription is published, for instance, in which GORILA volume as well as elsewhere, and some additional information about where it is currently held, its material, epigraphic, and paleographic features, as well as chronology, I set out to develop LIFE, Linear A Inscription Finder, still under construction. LIFE is a digital catalog of all extant Linear A inscriptions for ease of information retrieval, processing, and analysis aimed at specialists and amateurs alike. I would like to show you a preview of this ongoing digital project. Let's see if I can move on to the online web page. Can I make sure everybody can see it also from online, from the YouTube to quickly see it? Okay, perfect. So on the home screen, the find places of Linear A inscriptions that are also known with the name of locations are listed in alphabetical order. Maps are also given clearly to locate sites geographically, as a good number of find places or archaeological sites of Linear A documents are not always straightforward to locate. So by clicking on any of these tags, one is redirected to the actual catalog. So I would like to take Hagia Triada as an example, for instance, which is the Cretan site which has yielded most Linear A documents to date. So currently, the catalog is in the form of a spreadsheet listing all inscriptions in ascending numerical order, showing inscriptions reference numbers and standard abbreviations, and giving details about where each inscription is published, with embedded hyperlinks to further resources wherever possible, and also where the inscribed object is held, in which museum, for instance, here, current location, alongside basic information about the object's material and epigraphic features and its chronology. Of course, it is nowhere close to being an exhaustive list, yet it may prove a useful starting point for further study of one or a set of selected inscriptions. I'll now go back to the home screen. So additional resources are also given in the heading here to contextualize linear inscriptions, as well as getting a basic working knowledge of the amount of extant evidence and the linear A classification system. For instance, under Find Places here, one can see a full list of the sites that have so far yielded linear A inscriptions with standardized abbreviations, plus the amount of evidence produced, again listed in alphabetical order. Then, if I go back to the main web page, we can also check document types. So under document types, one can find a table summarizing the linear A writing media classification system for ease of understanding what a linear inscription reference means. For instance, all inscriptions classified as VC are roundels or ZA are vessels. So this is just a reference tool. Moving on, we can check, click on maps, for instance, and here I provide a basic reference maps showing the geographical distribution not only of linear A inscription but also of linear B inscriptions, and in this case also Cretan hieroglyphic inscriptions for comparative purposes, with a view of developing this website further in the future. Finally, under chronology, one can find a reference table with the absolute and relative dating of linear inscription. So this is the reason why I tried to develop this website also for amateurs and non-specialists, so that they can try and navigate the complex and kaleidoscopic context of linear A in all its as a whole. I cut short. So life is still under ongoing development, as I mentioned, and therefore is not yet open access, and more features will be added over time, and I would be delighted to get any amount of constructive feedback from the audience, both in the room and online, on which additional features may be useful to add in the future for both specialists and non-specialists. So I'm now go back to the PowerPoint. Perfect. So this is all for sorted. Moving on, we have see it. So once sorted, where to see linear inscriptions. So in addition to, as well as an alternative to the traditional print-only corpus, I co-developed an interactive database of linear inscriptions back in 2020. This is a SIGLA, the Science of Linear A, a paleographical database, open access, digital, usable within and beyond academia. SIGLA is supposed to be, and hopefully will be, a substantial academic contribution to knowledge and a major public benefit, at least so I hope. Like never before, all users, specialists and not, can now see and engage with interactive linear inscriptions in the form of line drawings made by me based on the printed corpus, and users can now read signs and words by themselves. I would like to show some of the features of SIGLA so that you can further engage with the tool in your own time. So it is available on 2 different addresses. I just try and see if it works from this one. Perfect. So let's have a look at the database. This is the home page, which allows to make a number of searches, for example, by linear A sign, by document type, or by sign sequence. And there is also an option to explore the sign list and inscriptions, more broadly speaking. The sign list first. The linear A sign list given here shows actual attestations of linear A size as they occur on the documents, and not abstract shapes standardized as the edited corpus does. Linear A sign list displays both simple signs and composite signs. Here we can see simple signs, and if we scroll down here, we can see composite signs. For composite signs, composition arrangements are also indicated here at the bottom of each single sign, where composite signs are broken down into their own constitutive components for ease of understanding of their structure. By clicking on any of these signs, let's say, let's go for a more standard one, this one, the user is redirected to the paleographic chart showing all paleographic variants of the sign selected as it appears at the different sites. For example, the first one is Hagia Triada because it has yielded the most examples. Then we have, for instance, Festos, Kania, Malia, Pyrgos, Knossos, Kurnia, Hagios Stephanos. Moreover, by clicking on any one of these signs, let's take this one, for instance, on any of these variants, because after all they are sign variants, we can see where exactly it occurs. Here, for instance, these sign variants occurs on the tablet at Zakros 15a from the site of Zakros, and it works as a syllabogram. Now I would like to go back to the home page and show you another function, which is Browse Corpus. So this feature allows us to explore Sigla in its own corpus as a whole, where we can see all linear A inscriptions. I think it's having issues uploading. Well, you should be seeing all the linear A inscriptions contained currently on Sigla, listed according to site in alphabetical order. I think it's starting to show. Yeah, exactly. Now, okay. Again, in alphabetical order, you can see all inscription, and this can give readers an overview of the amount of information yielded by each and every single sign, and also the kind of typological and epigraphical and paleographical variation. Finally, going back to the home page, I'd like to show you another final thing, which is the map. So this is much smaller than the other 3 maps currently included in Life, because it was developed in an earlier time of my career also. This is just to locate the find places, the most common find places of linear inscriptions, and these are let's say the one that has so far yielded the most linear A documents, traditionally subdivided within the categories of administrative and non-administrative documents. So I would suggest basically juggling back and forth between this map and the one in Life to get most of the geographical information for linear A documents. Now let's try and go back. I would like to go back to my PowerPoint. There we go. Okay, I would like now to show you how a linear A inscription is presented in the traditional corpus, GORILA, and what it looks like in Sigla. So on this slide, you can see a photograph which I took at the Archaeological Museum of Heraklion on Crete of tablet H313 from the site of Hagia Triada in central Crete, and how it is published in GORILA, showing a black and white photograph, a line drawing, a transcription of the inscription as it shows on the tablet surface on top, which is followed by its standardized version at the bottom, with each line representing an individual entry. So let us now have a look at how tablet Hagia Triada 13 shows in Sigla. First, we need to look it up. There we go. Using the lookup tool. So I write Hagia Triada 13. And this can be done with any inscription for which you have a reference number. So each linear A inscription in Sigla is introduced by some basic details, giving information here about its find place, material features, and chronology. There is also a link to the standard corpus of inscriptions, which is GORILA, and each inscription is here shown in the form of line drawings based on the added corpus, GORILA. And to circumvent the copyright issues surrounding the original drawings, I decided to make my own drawings for each document, as faithful to the originals as possible. This long and time-consuming process turned out to be fruitful, as it allowed me to separate distinctly each and every single sign drawn on the tablet surface, which is separated also, singled out by color code. So each sign is colored according to the function it performs on the inscription. This can be a phonetic sign, that is to say a syllabogram that you can see here in blue highlight, or a picture sign, that is to say a logogram or ideogram here in green highlight. It can also be a numerical sign, such as a fraction, for instance, which you can see in the orange highlight. So the inscription can be displayed in either in sign view, as it is now, so you can clearly see what is what, but it can also displayed in word view. So here we go to word view, grouping together different sign sequences and signs that belong to the same sign sequence. In both cases, by clicking on a sign or a word, we can see all the other occurrences across the corpus. For example, if I go back to sign view, I can click on any, for instance here the first one, and it redirects users of Sigla to the main paleographical chart displaying all the different variants of the same sign. We now go back to Hagia 14 and we move to word view. We can do the same, for instance, for words, sign sequences. We can check last one here, kuro, which means total, one of the very few words that you actually know the meaning of in Minoan. If we click on it, it can show you all the attestations in context of the word kuro across the corpus, which is quite useful for statistical analysis. So just to see where the words occurs and is placed across documents and document types. If you now go back to Hagia Triada 13, you can appreciate it here. Hagia Triada 13 only shows simple signs. You see that there are no complex signs on this tablet. So let us have a look at another tablet, always from Hagia Triada, which shows composite signs. We can use a different tool here, the little lens, Hagia Triada 14. So the next one in line. This tablet contains a number of composite signs. For example, we have one here, here, we've got one here, we've got another one here, another one there. By clicking on any of these signs, once again, we are redirected and we can jump onto a dedicated page showing all the occurrences of these individual signs. For instance, here I cannot scroll down, meaning that the only site where this sign is attested is Hagia Triada. So Hagia Triada 14, if I go back to it, is fascinating also because it shows an erasure. Here you see in red highlight. This is an erasure is an epigraphic context where the scribe erased a previously written sign and wrote another one on top. This feature is relative to the inscription making process and can also be searched in Sigla. For instance, we can go back to the home page and we can run a search for all the tablets that show erasure. We go on the sign search. We look for an attestation. I choose an operator. Oh, apologies. Let's try choose. I want to see a sign which is an erasure. And I'd like to display also the document that shows the erasure. And I go for search the corpus. So here look out for the red bits. The red bits show epigraphic context where the scribe erased a document, a previously written sign, and wrote something else on top. And you can do this for any site that has produced linear inscription. There are also very extensive places where erasure can be found here and there. I now would like to go back to the homepage to show you another feature of Sigla, because a very similar search can be done for composite signs to look up, for instance, all attestations of a given sign in composition. So by way of example, I would like to take linear A sign A32302, which is a linear A only sign. So we go again under sign search, sign, and we look up for A301, sorry, A3, A302, there we go, is here. And I would like to check attestation in composition, and I would also like to display document containing the occurrence, and I go search the corpus. So here in green highlight, you can see all the different contexts in which this composite sign, the sign A302, which is this one, looking like a comb, basically, occurs in composition, and with which sign it is composed with. Sorry. So all in all, these are the main features of the Sigla database, and I hope to have shown you a few general and more specific searches that Sigla allows users to perform. So let's go back to my PowerPoint presentations. So after this short presentation of Sigla's features, I would like to show you some examples of current applications of Sigla. So first, as to comparative paleography, Sigla allows detailed paleographical comparison of signs and sign shapes. So the original data set forming the core of the Sigla database was collected in print form for my doctoral dissertation, now out as a monograph, Aegean Linear Script, rethinking the relationship between Linear A and Linear B, published by Cambridge University Press in 2020. Another recently published paper co-authored with my colleague Dr. Anna Judson, that some of you may know, also uses Sigla to compare Linear A sign variants with Linear B ones to study the transmission of the linear writing tradition from Crete to mainland Greece and to test the validity of using paleography for dating purposes. Second, Sigla can also allow to study documents and script in their materiality. For instance, another paper of mine, which has recently come out, investigates the influence of materiality and material constraints on the typological structure of Linear A, especially in relation to the origin of composite signs. Last but not least, I plan to take this project a step further and explore digital methods, techniques, and approaches falling under the umbrella of AI and machine learning, with a view to detecting scribal hands, that is to say, the writers behind the words of Linear A, which is still, to a great extent, uncharted territory, but this is another story. On this note, here are some further pathways of research Sigla may open up, at least in my view. Firstly, it may allow us to carry out a refinement of the Linear A sign repertory, as the actual number of Linear A signs is still unclear. In fact, a number of signs in the printed corpus are listed as unclassified or have been overlooked. Moreover, the corpus lists all attestations of composite signs as signs themselves, not one-off attestations as they are. Clearly, the traditional list needs tidying up, and I hope Sigla will help in this endeavor. Secondly, Sigla may allow to get insights into scribal activity by studying the variation in sign shapes within and across sites, which can lead to the identification of scribal hands and their administrative connections, as well as scribal training and the transmission of writing traditions on Crete and beyond. Thirdly, to some extent, Sigla can also allow a study of the documents in their physical characteristics by looking at epigraphic features like erasures, for instance, or the use of a word divider, the presence or absence of ruling lines, the density of information and writing on tablet surface, and the order of information recorded, as well as pinacological features, for instance, size comparison, presence of cuttings and inscribed backs, or whether or not a tablet is a palimpsest. Finally, needless to say, users can customize their own datasets based on their own research interests. For instance, to carry out comparative research within a site or cross-site, or sign/word frequency analysis. Finally, say it. Once sorted and seen, what to say about the wider historical context in which Linear A inscriptions were used, Growing public interest in Aegean scripts, coupled with paucity of reliable open access resources, encouraged me to start a podcast series on Aegean studies, namely Aegean Connections, to bridge the gap between academics and the general audience. For Aegean Connections aims to connect all those passionate about Aegean studies encompassing archaeology, history, culture, to name a few. With a focus on the ancient past, especially Bronze and Iron Ages, this podcast builds a bridge between scholars active in Aegean-oriented academic fields and the wider audience, trying to connect our shared passions for the Aegean context. Aegean Connection is ongoing since February 2024, with episodes released on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. The next episode, to come out very soon, features a conversation with our very own Katie Shields, and if anyone is interested in to giving it a listen. So far, several themes have been discussed and dialogued with invited speakers, among which we have Linear A and Linear B, Cypro-Minoan, Hittite, the relationship between Greek and pre-Greek substratum, script decipherment theory, the legacy of Minoan archaeology, Mycenaean textile industry and Aegean textiles, Aegean seals and sealing practices, mobility in the Eastern Mediterranean, and an episode on the newly published novel Mythica by Dr. Emily Hauser. And more episodes are in line, of course, the more the merrier. The podcast is available for free on Spotify and Spotify for Creators, and I'd like to show you the main webpage of Spotify for Creators now, where you can more easily view the extensive show notes that are produced in conjunction with every episode's recording and are meant to be an additional learning resource to those interested in any one of the topics covered. So very quickly, I just jump onto the webpage. Here it is, Aegean Connections. The episodes are listed in descending order. So this is the last one I mentioned with Emily, who gave an amazing presentation of a new book, Mythica. And let's have a look at this one. For instance, you can see the extensive show notes with a short overview of the speaker and the episode description and a list of resources. And this applies to every single episode. So again, as I said, the more the merrier. And soon we will have Kathy's one. Finally, going back to my PowerPoint presentation, I would say it twice. Because as the Latin saying goes, repetita iuvant. So to bring this outreach session to an end, I'd like to bring up my latest work to be released in summer 2025. I'm apologies, there have been some delays. It was supposed to be coming out in June, but hopefully it will come out in August or before the fall. So this is writing Bronze Age Script, Minoan Linear A, the very first concise yet comprehensive introduction to the Linear A scripting context, aimed at an educated yet not necessarily specialist audience. This volume is part of the Cambridge Element series Writing in the Ancient Worlds, published by Cambridge University Press, and is available in both print version and ebook. If any of you is interested in getting a copy, I'd strongly recommend the digital edition, as it contains a high number of embedded hyperlinks to photos of Linear A inscriptions and to further resources. Another attempt of mine to digitalize, as it were, our scholarship, as I said, Linear A still suffers strongly from under-digitalization. So I hope this short volume will prove a reliable as well as useful further tool for the study and dissemination of knowledge of the Linear A script, inscriptions, and its users. However, in addition, I would also like to show you that this volume shows a number of selected and illustrative examples of Linear A inscriptions like the one on the slide, for which I provide a phonetic reading of the text with color code and an interpretation thereof, very much similar to what Sigla shows in the digital format. So this inscription, for instance, which is a Hagia Triada 28, back, front and back, A and B, is also available in Sigla, of course, in an interactive fashion, and I would like to show it in Sigla for comparative purposes. So let's have a look. For instance, you can have a look at Agetriada 28 here at the front, and if we go back, we can also have a look at how it shows in the back. So this is basically the same tablet written on both sides. So of course, my printed version of the volume will not be as interactive and digital as Sigla, but I've given the users and the readers enough references in both the print version of this volume and the digital version to be able to move back and forth between the text and the Sigla. So I hope this element, Sigla in Life, will provide a useful triad of tools to embark on the complex yet much rewarding study of the Linear A scripts and inscriptions, and to disseminate knowledge of Linear A, still a niche research area, both within and beyond academia. But we shall never forget we are dwarfists sitting on the shoulders of giants. The most comprehensive overview and commentary of Linear A texts and inscriptions was produced by Professor John Younger, now Emeritus Professor, once based at the University of Kansas. This invaluable resource, which is Linear A texts and inscriptions in phonetic transcription and commentary, was originally a website taken down by the University of Kansas in April 2024 after Professor Younger's retirement. However, not to despair, never despair, because the contents of the website are now available as PDF files, freely downloadable, on Professor Younger's academia.edu webpage, as well as in the Internet Archive. So this is all from me, and thank you very much for your kind attention and patience, and I would be most delighted to engage in further discussion and take questions in the time remaining. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Esther, thank you very much. That was a tremendous introduction, certainly for me, into an area which I've never really looked into at all. I know very little about Linear A, and it was extremely informative. There's been obviously a tremendous amount of work you've done over the years with all creating and documenting in all of these databases is a staggering amount of work. I think now, as chair, there's an opportunity for those of you following online to use the chat function to ask Esther any questions. And similarly, I think it's probably easier for my colleagues in London if there's any questions for people in the room there for them to directly ask Esther rather than via me as remotely.
Questions from anyone in the room here?
Yeah. That was a wonderful talk, thank you. Can I start off with an uninformed question? You had Miletus with a question mark.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the Linear A text from Miletus, you don't think that they are 100%?
Let's say there's 90% chance it is Linear A. There is a bit of a complex context, and also the inscription is not very extensive. So let's say we put question marks because to show that we are not entirely sure it is Linear A, but I could just put a percentage after the question mark. So I would say 90% sure is Linear A, but it's always like, a limit. So I would say yes, my latest, my yielded Linear A inscription. It's just one inscription.
Can I jump in and ask a question about Sigla? So do you plan to put transliterations on there at any point and have it sort of searchable by transliteration sequences longer than just one sign or one sequence of sign or word? Is that something that you're thinking of doing?
Yes, definitely so. There will be an implementation that I would love to do, but it requires much further work on Sigla, which at the moment is a bit frozen. I think in terms of transliteration, you can, in a way, work it out by yourself. The user can work it out by yourself, because when I show that, you can actually have the tablet in a word view. This allows the user to hover over the tablet with the mouse and to see the different words, different sign sequences. So in a way, you can recreate your own transcription just by going through the tablets. So you'll see sign sequence that you can read, and then you can see the logogram and go over the next line, right? And you can also, if you want statistical analysis on a word, you can click on the sign sequence, like what I showed for kuro, for instance, and you can see where it appears. So in some ways, painstakingly again, you can actually have, give it a go at basically transliterating the text yourself and doing some kind of statistical analysis about on the occurrences of words or individual signs by using Sigla. But of course, in an ideal world, I'd love to add transcriptions alongside the drawing, just for ease of comparison, so that you can have another bit of information which is more clear and standing out of the as a text. So thanks a lot. I don't know if I answer your question. So yeah, you can work your way in Sigla to find the transcription.
Yes, as I understood, your database of the live database is not yet online, or it's not live yet.
It's not live yet. It's I'm developing it online, yes, but it's not open access because it's in theory, basically. And I'd like to try and put some more data before releasing it, and making sure also that the data are not interpolable at the moment, because as I mentioned, is in the form of spreadsheets.
Okay,
I'd like the spreadsheet not to be basically modifiable by external users at the moment. I would like to have control over the data, and once it's sealed, then I will release it. And I will have to implement it over time, of course, with further with new finds coming up. And actually, there are always new finds coming up, even though one wouldn't say. But yeah, hopefully it will come out in some point soon. I mean, linear A texts are not that many, like 1,400, so like just under 2,000 inscriptions. So hopefully my lifetime will be able to do it right, unless another pandemic, you know.
But you said there's a publication of Fred and Zerbeck in 2004. So since then, they don't particularly increase the number of those.
So the supplement to GORILA came out this year, early in 2025. And it contains all the linear A inscriptions which were published after the 1980s, which is the decades in which the last volume of GORILA 5, came out. So basically, yeah, it fills the gap between the 1980s and 2025, roughly speaking. Or let's say 2000, yeah, few years ago, you know, publication process takes a bit of time. So yeah.
Do you have more questions for Peru?
I'm sorry for the question. It's not really a question, but curiosity. If there is some relationship between this amazing work, because it's, thank you for the presentation. I mean, it's very, very interesting, and the museums or sites they have these pieces.
Okay, so in this case, I don't have any ongoing collaboration or future collaboration with any museums, mostly because I am still a postdoctoral researcher, let's say. So I'm fellow at the Aarhus Institute of Advanced Studies. So I don't have that much collaboration with museums, but I've been part of the Inscribe project before moving to Aarhus, as I mentioned in the past. And in the Inscribe project, which is ERC funded, managed to set up a collaboration with the Herakli Museum, and therefore they got access to the originals, and they produced the 3D models. So I was not there for those. I mean, I just joined the project for the last 6 months of its lifespan. So I was not able to go to the museum and do the 3D scan, the 3D models, but they managed to do that. Of course, I would love in the future to try and get some kind of collaboration with museums and building up on what we've been doing. But this is something which I aim to do in the future with more funding or options. And, but yeah, there are projects like Inscribe project and also the Python project, which have already been like collaborating with museums on crypto. And also, I think the Pigorini. Yeah, the Pigorini Museum in Rome, I think, has got collaborations with the Python project, if I'm not mistaken, but we should ask Alessandro Greco, who is in charge.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Just
More questions?
Could I follow on from Kate's question about transcription? Will you, or do you also give a transcription or interpretation of the ideograms? Or is that impossible?
well, I would say on Sigla, no. On Sigla, let's say the most of what we call ideograms or logograms in Linear A are actually called complex signs. They fall into the category of complex or composite signs. So basically, it's in the second part of the sign list that I showed earlier, complex signs. So the complex signs are difficult to interpret by themselves, and there is still no consensus of what they actually mean. So when some of the so-called ideograms or logograms are shared with Linear B. So in that case, we may have, statistically speaking, we can say we have a basic knowledge of what a logogram or ideogram can stand for instance, figs. So the logogram or ideogram for figs is shared between Linear A and Linear B. So we can say, okay, that is a fig. When this happens, in Sigla, the Latin name of the logogram is given, so in the same way as it is done for Linear B. So again, the example of fig is AB30. So in Sigla, you'll see AB30/fig, which is the short for ficus, right? So we are sure that that's basically the logogram for fig. In the other instances, most Linear A ideograms, as it were, are composite signs. And if there is a composite sign, which, for instance, fig plus another sign, you can see that with fig actually doesn't apply, but with olive oil, ole, it does apply, which is 302, which I showed earlier. So you can see, for instance, where olive oil appears in combination with another sign to form a composite sign with an ideographic or semasiographic function. When in the future transcription will ever be given alongside the tablet drawings, maybe I can think about exactly adding a list of AB shared logograms or ideograms with the potential meaning, for instance, and composite signs function is on slogogram. But at the moment, I'm just focusing in these projects on basically the basic facts of Linear A without adding interpretation. So for individual use, let's say the tools that you can at the moment use for interpretation, which is mostly a self-thought practice, will be my elements and Professor Younger's papers, plus all the information academics and non-academics can find disseminated both online or in academic libraries. And of course, the reliability thereof has got to be double-checked. So always with the cum grano salis, as Latin goes, with a grain of salt. I hope I answered your question.
Sure. I've got a very, it may be a very abstract question, in which case feel free to reply with a two-letter answer. But
AB.
So I was wondering, the sites you showed, Sigla and Vive and so forth, sorry, Life and so forth. They're very, very customized. They're very bespoke for this. How much of that customization, how much of the design of those sites do you think is so unique to the needs of Linear A? And how much do you think that the sort of infrastructure you've been building could be used for completely different scripts? I'm thinking of other undeciphered scripts and languages that there's a lot of interest in at the moment. Things like the Indus script and things like this. That there's these huge quests for. How I'm not so much thinking could they use your site, but how unique to Linear A are the sorts of functionalities you've built in, such as the ability to look at individual glyphs and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'll say it was, so I've got a twofold answer, one for Sigla and one for Life. So let's start with the simpler one, Life, because it's just a catalog, right? So it is customized to Linear A and bespoke to Linear A and tailored up to a point, but then it's just a catalog. And then I decided to add more features just to give the users as much information as possible, because I know that Linear A is still a niche subject. And I spent so much time trying to teach myself, and therefore I'm trying also to ease the process of learning and teaching Linear A in the future, or by offering as much information as possible. But for life, yeah, it's just my idea is just to offer an interactive catalog with as much information as possible. So I think it's very much transferable to any other context in which something similar is useful. When it comes to Sigla, the answer is slightly more complex, I would say, because it has been started as from scratch, let's say. So my collaborator, my co-developer, Simon Castellac, currently based at INRIA in Rennes, developed the software from scratch under my basically guidance. And I said, like, this is Linear A, I need A, B, C, and D feature, for instance, and he developed the software. And then I think some of the functions that are available in Sigla can also be used for other scripts, especially, for instance, what I'm very proud of is like erasures, because I like erasures because they show also the passing of time and scribal activity. So a scribe, somebody wrote something and then they erased the text and they wrote something on top. And that I think is super interesting, also because most of the Linear A documents are tablets, in this case, are palimpsests. So they were meant to be reused. So it would be extremely interesting to see what was written under the text that has been handed over to us. Linear B does show erasures as well, for instance. So something like this, a feature where you can look up erasures, can also be applied to Linear B and any other script that shows context of erasures. Then also like the word view and sign view can be applied to other texts which have individual glyphs as well as words. And so I think it's Sigla started off as a customized bespoke dataset database for Linear A, but I would say that most of the feature can be transferred. It's just a matter of building the software. I cannot think of any one single feature of Sigla that cannot potentially be transferred to another script. Maybe I'm saying wrong because you say never, but just trying to rewind my brain and thinking about features. Yeah, maybe the one about composite signs, right? Because I showed you in the presentation that you can look up signs in composition, and I'm not entirely sure that all scripts may have composite sign, right? So that's the specific features of Linear A. But maybe other scripts have got features that, for instance, Hebrew, they have the dots, so I think it can be customized. I don't know if I answered your question. Thanks.
I was just wondering, it may be a naive idea, but where there are signs in common between Linear A and Linear B, I wonder whether it's worthwhile sort of making those Linear B signs available in Sigla, so you could look at the similarities between the four, possibly even scribal hands. I don't know if that's a thing. Or possibly also statistical information on their occurrences in the respective scripts.
Okay, so I think that would be an addition, very useful addition. And I would say most, in Sigla, you may have a way of understanding which signs are also shared with Linear B, because they are labeled AB. So if you go in the sign list, the simple signs, you will see the reference number. So for instance, AB01/DA. So AB means the sign is shared in both syllabaries, Linear A and Linear B. It is numbered 01 because initially signs were listed in order of graphic complexity, like from simple to more complex. And then only after the decipherment of Linear B in 1952, where Linear B was deciphered as Greek, the phonetic value was added after the number. So now we have, for instance, 01 is Da, read with phonetic value Da, and we assume that with an approximation, we can apply the same phonetic value to the homomorphic Linear A sign. So AB01 given that is shared between the two graphic systems, may potentially also be given the same phonetic reading. So if you want to check, for instance, what an AB sign looks like in linear B, for now we have basically to have a look at the linear B standard chart of paleographic variants available in the printed corpora. I'm not aware if there is one available online. Putting an online one in Sigla would be, I think, useful, and I would definitely give it some thought, because it may be useful for paleographical purposes. Definitely so. But yeah, again, by browsing Sigla, I know that you are an expert in linear B as well. If you see an AB sign, you can just go back to your own resources for paleographical linear B paleographical charts and have a chat with the linear A ones. That would be useful.
Other questions here in the room?
It's just that I'm, it was interesting you were saying about using kind of AI in the future, and I was just wondering if you could expand on some of the sort of thoughts you had about the ways, I'm assuming statistics comes into it, and trying to science or occurrence, what's your kind of what do with that?
Yeah. So that's exactly the future pathways of research that I would like to explore. So I've got to add the premise that I am not expert in any digital technology at all. Although I'm trying to do digital stuff, I completely feel like a fish out of my fish bowl because I know nothing. I've been chatting with and interacting with people more like expert in digital technologies, and I've been advised, for instance, to try out at least 2 different techniques, which are generative AI, supervised generative AI, and deep machine learning. And my initial and provisional idea would like to try out these techniques to identify scribal hands, as I said, because I would like to see how and explore the issue of literacy in Minoan Crete, because we still do not know, for instance, who and especially how many were the scribes of Linear A, as I mentioned in my talk, who was able to produce the documents, and also how different potential graphic traditions were spread both within Crete and potentially across the Aegean, where Linear A is attested. So yeah, first I would like to explore generative AI, deep learning, machine learning part of it, and also OpenCV, so Open Computer Vision. But again, I will have to train myself and ask for collaborations or just advice from computer scientists and specialists, because as I said again, I know absolutely nothing. So yeah, if anybody is interested, I'm happy to learn about any of the topics mentioned. The general public. Yes, so there is my institutional email address on my webpage. So if you Google my name, basically, you will find my webpage at the Aarhus Aarhus Institute of Advanced Studies, and there is my email address. So if anybody would like to contact me anytime, can get in touch with me at the moment. And my current way of disseminating knowledge of Linear A is basically through the podcast. So that's the main outlet. And otherwise, yes, and I'm giving talks and lectures. But you can find my email address anytime. I don't know if that was what I answered your question, or you meant more like public engagement.
I don't want to ask a question because I'm not specific. But there are certainties in the culture, in the historical culture.
Okay.
That I would like to inform you of them.
Amazing. Yes.
Definitely.
I can pass you my email address later. You just Google my name, and anybody who is interested in contacting me can find the email address.
Thank you, Esther. I'm not sure if there's any questions online. I'm not that I can see, and I'm not sure if there's any more questions in the room in London for Esther. I would just like to say it's been hugely interesting for me to listen to your talk this evening. And particularly, you mentioned at the end, the public outreach work that you're doing with this as well, the podcast and your book, which is coming out in a few months' time as well. I think it's very timely. And congratulations on that. It's fantastic to see the work, the effort and work you're doing in there. So with this, so certainly from my point of view, as one of the organisers here, and for the others as well, I thank you a lot for your time. For joining everyone in London this evening, I don't think there's any more questions that we can follow up. But certainly, I thank you a huge amount for your talk this evening.
Thanks a lot, Steve.